We are back. Sam Seder, Majority Report, Fun Half, Emma Vigeland, out today. I am. Sam, are you going to live stream your debate tonight? I don't want to watch it on H3's stream.
I'm sure people will clip it.
D. Hires, Sam, you're seriously not going to stream it on your channel? I don't know how to do that. Ask Ethan his opinion about Jewish Voice for Peace if you want to have a more interesting conversation. Jewish Voice for Peace. Watch out for talking with Ethan. He's going to have Sam Seder step in as a pinch debater at the last second. What a fucking nightmare.
That would fuck you up.
O'Malley, Sam, you've done your research. Sam, oh, you have no idea. Janet, the call yesterday about leaving the country kind of stuck in my craw. It sticks it sticks in my craw. Anybody starts talking about this. I think the vast majority of people think they could leave the country are liars or wholly misinformed. If you don't have lots of money or citizens somewhere else, how are you going to get out of here? Who's going to take you? More magical thinking. If you can get out, great. Go. But unless you have a plan for the rest of us, why would we want to hear it? That's good.
Yeah, it's not politics.
Rural Lefty, for those of us less in the know, who is Sam debating at 4 p.m. Eastern time? I don't know. I'm not perceiving it as a debate. Ethan Klein from H3N. Is that what it is? HN3?
Just H3.
H3. Scary Carrie. Sam, it's a trap. That's what someone from the Star Wars movie said. Sorry, not a Star Wars fan. Germo, Hillary tried to take corporate money in Robert Mueller investigation, put her down. Tippy Tappy Toe, do you think Lindsey Graham has a humiliation kink? His Pope tweet makes me think so. Pure humiliation bait, if you ask me. Parade of idiots. Is the Trump regime going to go after Paramount Plus for being anti-Semitic? Referring to the latest rehearsal episode where the host explained that an episode of his show was taken down for anti-Semitic sensitivities. Oh, yeah. So then Nathan Fielder, we were talking about this. Yeah, Nathan Fielder on Paramount Plus streaming, I guess, his show was partially censored because it came out of Europe, and the Europeans had a problem with like what he was saying about Nazis or something.
Germany in particular.
Yeah, Germany, and then just they all followed Germany's line. But Paramount has got other issues, it seems to me. New York Times reported yesterday that lawyers for Trump and Paramount, the parent of the CBS News, are set to begin mediation on Wednesday over a lawsuit brought by Trump that accuses 60 Minutes of deceptively editing an interview with his 2024 Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris. Legal experts have called the suit baseless and an easy victory for CBS. It's absurd. It is absurd. There is absolutely no way for Donald Trump to win this lawsuit. 100%. But Paramount is entering the talks prepared to make a deal. Sherry Redstone, the company's controlling shareholder, has said she favors settling the case. She is set to receive a major payday in a pending sale of Paramount to Hollywood studio, Skydance, that requires sign-off from the Trump administration. Let me repeat that. Sherry Redstone, the company's controlling shareholder, has said she favors settling the case. She is set to receive a major payday in a pending sale of Paramount to a Hollywood studio, Skydance, that requires sign-off from the Trump administration. Does everybody get the dynamic here? Here is, to their credit, it is audio only.
Because 60 Minutes is very quick on the copyright trigger.
It is, what number is this?
It's at the very bottom of the sound sheet.
Okay, what's the number?
It's not printed out.
It's not on that one. I don't know when you have.
Okay.
Scott Pelley.
Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. And kudos, Scott Pelley, for doing this. And kudos for the EP of the show that he's talking about. Here is the audio of that.
In tonight's Last Minute, a note on Bill Owens, who until this past week was executive producer of 60 Minutes. He was our boss. Bill was with CBS News nearly 40 years, 26 years at 60 Minutes. He covered the world, covered combat, the White House. His was a quest to open minds, not close them. If you've ever worked hard for a boss because you admired him, then you understand what we've enjoyed here. Bill resigned Tuesday. It was hard on him and hard on us, but he did it for us and you. Stories we pursued for 57 years are often controversial. Lately, the Israel-Gaza war and the Trump administration. Bill made sure they were accurate and fair. He was tough that way. But our parent
Pause it for a
company,
second.
Paramount.
Now, I don't think it's a mistake that Pelley included Israel, Gaza, and Trump. Because A, this is clearly a sop to the Trump administration so that Shari Redstone gets her payoff. But B, Shari Redstone also happens to be a major Zionist. And it sounds like what Scott Pelley is saying, that they got pushback on stories they did about those things. Good.
And fair. He was tough that way. But our parent company, Paramount, is trying to complete a merger. The Trump administration must approve it. Paramount began to supervise our content in new ways. None of our stories has been blocked, but Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires. No one here is happy about it, but in resigning, Bill proved one thing. He was the right person to lead 60 Minutes all along.
What does that say for everybody still there?
Yep. The company, Skydance, I don't know how good they're going to be. It's owned by the son of Oracle's, the guy who did Oracle.
Is that Ellison?
Yep. His son, David Ellison, I guess, is the owner of Skydance.
I watched like 3 weeks ago the movie The Insider with Al Pacino and Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's what you said, Al Pacino. It's really Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I mean, Pacino's sort of my guy, I guess. But it's where Pacino plays a journalist for 60 Minutes.
Yep.
And it's all about big tobacco and, you know, sort of testimonies. And when I was watching it, I'm like, first of all, this doesn't show the news organization in a great light. And also, I don't think they would have shown as much backbone as they did then now. And, you know, I guess things just recur.
100%. 100%. Let's see a little bit more of that ABC interview from last night. Oh, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's start with some good news. I think we played a clip of Ed Markey. Was it Ed Markey? Yes. Sitting down. Van Hollen, I'm sorry. Van Hollen sat down with Mosin Mandawi. And it must have been up in the Vermont prison, where Mosin Mandawi has been held for 2 weeks now. On April 14th, he was detained and ordered deported, despite not being charged with a crime. And He was arrested by ICE up in Vermont. He was attending a naturalization interview. It was basically a setup. Pretend like he's got an interview and then arrest him. He argued that he was being unlawfully detained in retaliation for his speech advocating for Palestinian human rights. And that it is a part of a policy intended to silence and chill the speech of those who advocate for Palestinian rights. And according to the Trump administration, they need to deport him because his presence in the U.S. would have serious adverse foreign policy consequences and would compromise a compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. Very powerful dude. Justice Department included a 2-page letter from Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, saying Madawi's activities and presence in the U.S. undermines U.S. policy to combat anti-Semitism. His activities could potentially undermine the peace process underway in the Middle East. Last week, the Vermont Senate voted to condemn the manner and circumstances of Madawi's address. Well, today, a federal judge in Vermont, this is what was happening outside of the penitentiary, I guess, or the
Federal building.
The federal building. That's a lot of people for Vermont. It's like 6 people live in Vermont. Here is Madawi coming out of the prison. Of course, he was in that group shot there, too.
We will not fear anyone because our fight is a fight for love, is a fight for democracy, is a fight for humanity. And I am saying it clear and loud.
Yes.
To President Trump and his cabinet.
Yes.
I am not afraid of you. No fear! 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 That's right. No fear! And if there is no fear, what is it replaced with? Love. Love is our way.
A national security threat to me.
Yep. We don't want one of those love bombs to drop on one of our allies. I'm glad at the very least he's been released. We'll go through due process, and it's also going to be interesting. I mean, these are the things that the administration is afraid of, because they're going to have to make their case in a court of law. This is not just about sending a letter that is going to be rather insufficient. They're going to have to prove how protests about U.S. foreign policy and somehow is a national security threat or inhibits U.S. Foreign policy. I mean, here's the bottom line. If they can prove they're only looking to get rid of, to deport him, to take away his visa, and they're doing it under the auspices that his presence and activities have a serious adverse foreign policy consequence and could compromise a compelling foreign policy interest. If you just measure his actions, and they say that this is, and the reason why they say this is because their foreign policy goal is to fight anti-Semitism. This anti-Semitism law they're putting into in the Senate right now, they may vote on. You don't think they can find a punishment for American citizens who engage in the exact same activity? Just to be clear here, there's two parts of this. There is the, so-called punishment, but there's also the liability. And if the government can establish there is a liability associated with protesting U.S. foreign policy, that seems pretty problematic to me. That's an understatement.
And just a note, it was Van Hollen who went to El Salvador. It was Welch who met with him.
Oh, it was Welch.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. He's up in Vermont. That makes more sense. So we will see. It would be great if a New York senator actually visited some of the high-profile people being held in prison for the exact same thing.
A member of the House could do it too.
Yep, that's true. AOC could visit.
For example.
Or Pat Ryan.
Richard Torres.
Well, maybe he should stay away.
Let's get to Donald Trump. We've already played that clip of Donald Trump basically saying that he could get Abrego Garcia out of prison in El Salvador. He could do it, but he's a bad guy.
It's nasty.
So let's look into the basis of Donald Trump saying he's a bad guy. What did he call him? Like a rough apple. He's a real rough apple, this guy. Go ahead.
But the court has
He's
ordered
not.
you to facilitate that.
I'm not
release.
the one making this decision. We have lawyers
You're the
that don't
president.
want to do this.
But
Terry.
the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he
Supreme
is.
Court says what the law is.
Listen, I was elected to take care of a problem. It was a unforced error that was made by a very incompetent man, a man that turned out to be incompetent, that you always said was wonderful, a great genius, right? And now you find out, all of the media now, they're saying what a mistake they made. A man who was grossly incompetent allowed us to have open borders where millions of people flowed in. I campaigned on that issue. I wouldn't say it was my number one
Just
issue,
jump a
but
little bit ahead because we saw a little bit of that earlier.
That's all right.
we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and
All right.
on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well, wait
over
a
that.
minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles
did say-
tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute.
I-
Hey, Terry.
He did not
Don't
have the
do that.
letter MS13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay.
knew this
I
would
picked
come.
you, Terry. Hey, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13
All right,
tattooed.
we'll agree to disagree. I want to
Terry,
move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
And you think it
agree
was
to disagree.
Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He
Fair
had
enough.
MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine,
No,
sir.
Terry,
I want to get to
Terry,
Ukraine.
No.
Pause it. Now let's just be clear what's happening
Yes,
here. The ABC host wants, even though the ABC host is a 100% correct, he wants to keep moving on. And Trump is like, no. I've got this. I've got this whole thing. I've got it. Don't worry. Here is a picture of Donald Trump holding this up. Now, understand, he looks at the photo, and just to be clear on this photo, the MS-13, that is not part of the actual tattoo. That is just been imprinted on there.
That's a decoding
A decoding.
using like I don't know, like Microsoft Paint or something.
So the idea is like marijuana, smiley face, 1,
It seems like a bit of a stretch. I must.
skull 3. So that's the code. Skull is 3, cross is 1, smiley face is S, and marijuana is M.
Skull is 3. Everyone knows skull is 3.
You can see what is on his actual hands. These are doctored, and he's holding the photo up like it's a real thing. It says it right there. Let's go back to the argument that he's having with this guy. I don't even know who you are, but you clearly didn't see the picture I saw.
And he's, again, like I say, he's trying to move on because he knows Trump is wrong because
He's so embarrassed by it. He's so embarrassed by how wrong Trump is. He wants to, I don't want to.
Get some tattoos that are interpreted that way, but let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the
do that.
letter MS13.
It says MS13.
That was Photoshopped. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry.
I picked you.
He had MS13.
You're the 10 for the day.
I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture.
And you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there,
at the
but they're
photograph.
there now, right?
No,
but
they're there in
now.
your picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
he's got MS13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
Well, we'll take a look at that.
You do
We'll take
such a
look.
disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and...
This is amazing. And honestly, like, why didn't his producers go like, well, here, we'll show you the video.
we'll contrast the two.
It says it there. Look, here. Here, let me show you. This paper is MS13. Here it is. Look at the letters. Don't laugh. Why are you laughing? You think this is a joke? Can you not see this? I mean,
Someone's gonna screenshot that, and ICE is gonna break in here.
Just lost our advertising on YouTube, Sam. Holding that up.
there you go. He put up a piece of paper. While we're on the disturbing stuff, Donald Trump was in Michigan last night, touting his economy, which has gone in reverse. I mean, and not just like, imagine you're driving down the road and you're going 55 miles an hour like me, because I always maintain the speed limit. And then you jam your car into reverse. That is basically where we're at with the economy. So what do you do for your people if you don't want to talk about all the horrendous things you're doing? Doge was going to cut $2 trillion. Then they were going to cut $1 trillion. Then they were going to cut $600 billion. And then in 2026, they're going to cut, it's going to be a $150 billion cut. And I got news for you. That cut's going to be probably close to zero. In fact, if you add in what we're going to lose from the rollbacks on the staffing at the IRS, because we know every dollar you spend there is $5 to $12 in revenue. When you cut, you're going to lose that revenue. It's probably could actually be even minus money that we lose because of Doge. And so what do? Oh, I know. Let's just throw some real red meat, or I mean brown people, into the pit for my peeps. Here we go. This is a promo video for the torture and disappearing regime that the Trump administration has started. And this is the one that I think we've even played this before. This is the one that Bukele
Secret.
made. And listen to the crowd. Listen to the crowd. I mean,
Hogs.
let's say you wanted to come up with a modern sort of like, I don't know, 60 seconds that show fascism. Just like you were going to fictionalize it. Do you think that you would show pictures of prisoners being, having their head shaved with like, a pounding music shown in front of a crowd that then starts chanting USA? I mean, honestly, I feel like if you put into AI, what would be, imagine a fascist vision of America and like a 60-second video of what that would look like at a rally. It'd be pretty close. Or is that just am I being hysterical?
I do think like a previous, like I don't overly look, I don't look at American history with rose-colored glasses, but I do think some sort of patriotism would have kicked in, sending people to a penal colony in Central America and using the imagery as like hype videos.
I mean,
it's so disgusting.
It's just so twisted. It's so twisted. Oh, incidentally, remember the entire Republican Party, which at Donald Trump's behalf crushed an immigration bill that was frankly far more conservative than I would have liked. It was basically a gift to Republicans, and they quashed it because of Donald Trump. All that fascism, that's brought to you by the Republican Party. That's not just Donald Trump and Tom Homan. That's brought to you by the Republican Party. There was a lot of like in my mind, horrible things that Obama and Biden did on the immigration side. But that fascism, that's brought to you by the Republican Party. Super twisted. Sorry, I'm from Kansas. Somebody got a haircut looking good. I got this haircut like a week ago. Cognitive dissonant. It would be Trump flaunts his flouting of the Supreme Court. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And Bonara, can Schumer retire and nominate his fictional conservative constituents to govern on his behalf? Molly Gray Jedi. Sam, Trump actually thinks the letters and numbers on his fingers. He's so effing stupid. Shouldn't the cross be 3 because there were 3 crosses on that day Jesus died? I have no idea. He picked him because he thought that guy would, okay. Fabulous. You know he's serious. He's somewhat looking up. Sexually confused older Jewish woman. Chuck Schumer thinks he's penning the letter from a Birmingham jail, but it's more like the spam mail you get from Discover to sign up for a new credit card.
That election, because I believe RFK Sr. placed a phone call to MLK, swung the black vote in large part to the Kennedys away from Nixon. Schumer is like Nixon, sitting there not doing anything.
Yep. The mill rind. We're going to get domestic terrorism statute, not the one most contemplated. Sam, serious Apple question. Do you swing with the jazz variety? I don't know that, Apple. I don't think. Sax repair. There shouldn't be a cap at all. Agreed. Snorcerer. The only argument I can see, and I don't subscribe to it, but is that, well, there's the political argument, I guess, too, which may be more compelling than the policy argument from the Democratic perspective. There's always ever since even 20 years ago, they were talking about a donut hole. At that time, it was like $250,000 to $250,000 to like 400 or something like that. Or maybe, from 120 to 250. I can't remember what the donut hole. The only thing is that the people are not going to get higher returns based upon their contributions. Your pension under Social Security increases with the amount of payments that you pay in over the lifetime. You remove the cap, you would still put a cap on payments. The theory being that you clearly have enough money and you're just putting in an insurance payment on your benefits. Now, I would also be happy with, okay, get increased benefits and we just can tax at a higher rate. Kowalski from Nebraska. Sam, do you honestly think that Donald Trump, 6'3", 250-pound man who scored the highest on a cognitive test of any president in the last 50 years, wouldn't know what a Photoshop versus non-Photoshop picture would be? Come on. He didn't even seem to know what Photoshop means. Come on, you're doing the Photoshop.
You don't Photoshop it.
Iowa Ryan. Ethan is crazy. I'm worried for you. Well, isn't that what do you think I don't know. Joe Snuffy. Sam, did you hear about how in 2 weeks it'll be too late for U.S. suppliers to order goods for Christmas? They've all paused or canceled their orders because of the tariffs, and I want to know why no one is discussing this Republican war on Christmas. Oh, wow, good point. I don't know when that happens, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's at the end of, in Q2, if you're ordering for stuff for Q4. That makes sense to me, actually.
You know, in the cartoons when Wile E. Coyote's chasing Roadrunner and he goes off a cliff, but sort of just stands there because he doesn't realize he's went off the cliff yet, but then eventually he falls?
Yes.
I feel like that's where we're at.
Yes. Folks, that number says I'm opening up the phones, 646-257-3920. 646-257-3920. Can you hear that, Matt? Yep. Okay, good. Which number is Tim Pool here?
Should be at the end here.
I'll do this. Let's...
Oh, it might not be on the printed out one. This is a Tim Pool talking with Ian about the Maryland Man Hoax. Basically, he was in the White House press briefing and asked about the Maryland Man Hoax, and people are saying, what are you talking about, the Maryland Man Hoax?
Oh, the Maryland Man Hoax. Okay. Poor timing for Tim to come out with this on the day that Donald Trump was going to... He's got MS-13 on the picture of his hand. Not necessarily on the hand, but on the picture of the hand.
To actually look at what happened with the Covington kids. And we're going back years, but now the Maryland Man Hoax.
I got to talk about that. Okay, if I see both sides of this Maryland Man thing. If I moved to California and some shit went down.
Ian, where are you from?
Ohio, but I'm from Maryland because I
No,
live
you're
in
not.
Maryland.
You're not from Maryland.
Someone asked me, where are you from? If I was in Germany and they're like, where are you from? I'd say Maryland.
No, you wouldn't.
Because that's where I came from.
That's not true.
Because I moved around so much, I would tell people I'm from LA when I lived in LA. When they would ask, where are you from? I'm from LA. I've been there 7 years.
You are one of the rare people who does that.
If I went to California and there was an article written and something happened and they were like, California man, something, something. Yeah, that's the meme. You can move to Florida. You're a Florida man. Dave, what's his name? Does
No,
that.
No.
So anyway, that's the
Pause it for
your
a
wrong
second.
state of
Hold
mind.
on. These guys. I can't believe they're having a serious conversation about this.
This is just for people who don't understand why they're doing this. This is because Kilmar Abrego Garcia is described as a Maryland man because he, has a family there and a job.
Well,
he's been there since he's a teenager.
It's because they're not calling him a Maryland citizen or a Maryland resident because he doesn't have those legal statuses. So they call him a Maryland man.
People call me a Brooklyn podcaster.
I was going to say, I'm sort of like a Brooklyn guy, but not a man. I don't know what that is. Can we spend 45 minutes talking about that as if it's like a serious news analyst?
The news wouldn't call you a Worcester man if something happened to you in Brooklyn.
Worcester guy. Nobody refers to me that. I try and push it.
Despite your best efforts.
Uh-huh.
And this is a huge problem because Tim's whole thing is that everyone's wrong calling him a Maryland man.
From.
That's not true.
Because I moved around so much, I would tell people I'm from LA when I lived in LA. When they would ask, where are you from? I'm from LA. I've been there 7 years.
You are one of the rare people who does that.
If I went to California and there was an article written and something happened and they were like, California man, something, something. Yeah, that's the meme. You can move to Florida. You're a Florida man. Dave, what's his name? Does that?
No.
So anyway, that's
you're wrong.
State of mind is they.
No, it's not.
You can write it up as such.
Pause it for a second. You understand what happened here is that Tim Pool probably prepped as much for this as he did anything, which means that he probably spent like 90 seconds thinking about this. Oh, I've got a great angle.
Wrote 2 notes down.
I've got a great angle. He's not a real Maryland man. And he starts to introduce it, and Ian just immediately goes, wait, no, that's not true.
I call myself Ohio man.
Yeah, exactly. It would be weird. Worcester man Sam Seder does his show out of, does his classic Brooklyn podcast. Wait, what?
Yeah, and R.M. Brown pointed out that like most people from Florida weren't born there, but they're still called like Florida man, of course.
And there was an article written and something happened and they were like, California man, something, something. Yeah, that's the meme. You can move to Florida. You're a Florida man. Dave.
Actually, you know what? It just occurs to me. I was born in New York, and I still think that I'm a Worcester guy.
Right, exactly.
I was born in New York. I was here for the first 18 months of my life.
Manhattanite Sam Seder.
That's
you're wrong.
State of mind is they.
No, it's not.
You can write it up as such if I'm residing in there.
If you're lying to people.
Well, these people, this guy's an El Salvadorian, and they're intentionally trying to spin it like he's an American Maryland
That's the
dude.
point.
So
they're intent.
So what happened there is Ian realized he was getting in the way of the money here because the whole point is we're calling these guys illegal.
Exactly. Listen, I got to feel, I want to make this clear. I feel bad for the people who work for Tim Pool because they are stranded. They've all of them moved to West Virginia. And West Virginia is not exactly like a burgeoning economy. And they're in rural West Virginia. And so their only way to make money at this point is Tim Pool, unless they're going to uproot themselves and move away. And that's a big risk. I mean, when I was down there, I can tell you that, and I don't want to, single anybody out because I don't want to get, Tim is very vindictive of my understanding. But there was a guy who had a fairly prominent position in his enterprise, and then when all the Russian money dried up, ended up having to take a much lower position, sort of like out of desperation. Anyways, keep going.
So mad how mad Tim gets here.
If I went to California and there was an article written and something happened and they were like, California man, something, something. Yeah, that's the meme. You can move to Florida. You're a Florida man. Dave, what's his name? Does that?
No.
So anyway, that's
you're wrong.
State of mind.
You're
is
wrong. No, it's not.
You can write it up as such if I'm residing
if
in
you're
there.
lying to people.
Well, these people, this guy's an El Salvadorian, and they're intentionally trying to spin it like he's an American Maryland
That's the
dude.
point.
So
they're intentionally lying. They're pushing a hoax. And Hassan Piker, did you know this? Hassan did not know the guy was from El Salvador. One of one of the most prominent leftist streamers, speaking to millions of people, and in his mind, he saw CNN, he saw ABC, he saw these outlets, and he was like, "This guy's from Maryland. I can't believe Trump would deport him."
We don't need to watch it more. Hassan watched the clip of Tim Pool asking this, and he was as confused as Ian was at what point Tim was making, because we all know Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been there for almost a decade. He is a union member. He has a family. So, like, why you wouldn't call him a Maryland man who has a life in Maryland is confusing to most people, and that's what Hassan reacted to. Hassan has covered this story multiple times months before that.
Does anybody think that if Tim Pool was written about and they referenced any type of geography, they wouldn't reference West Virginia? I mean, now, did Tim Pool grow up in West Virginia? I have no idea where he grew up. All I know he's a West Virginia guy.
He's Illinois, maybe.
I love how mad he is, though, at Ian for ruining
Stepping on the bit.
Step on his bit.
No, it's not. You're lying.
You're lying.
You're lying.
Stop it.
Not calling yourself an Ohio man. Are you stupid? How stupid do you have to be?
Can you
to buy
imagine
that?
if I went on that show and said, "Listen, Ian, I'm not going to talk to you because you're going around pretending like you're an LA guy because you were in California,
stealing LA valor,
and it's crazy. Nobody can trust a single word you say. You're just a hoaxer.
Tell me where you were when you were 8.
In fact, I can't even look myself in the mirror anymore because I'm going around saying I'm a Worcester guy. I was born in New York.
I always thought it was a Mandan, but I was born in Bismarck. Damn.
I love calling it the Maryland Man Hoax as like a shorthand for just saying, discrepancy about where he's from, or they're trying to say he's from here or there.
It's more packaged slop for the type of people that believe him when he says the very fine people hoax, which is of course when Trump said that not everybody who went to the Robert E. Lee statue thing by Unite the Right Nazis was themselves a Nazi. Some of them were probably good, and that's supposed to be a hoax that people said he was saying the people that went to that were Nazis.
And the point of doing that, though, is not to be specific. The point is to make it sound like the whole thing is a hoax, not just the fact that they call him Maryland Man. Because he doesn't want people to dig in and find out, like, the judge said the one place he was not to be sent back to was El Salvador.
Because of worries about gangs. And yet we're sending him to El Salvador, where a head of state that does deals with gangs for their conditions in places like mass detentions is calling the shots because Trump doesn't want to force his hand.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from an 804 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, man, this is, my name's Hunter. I'm calling from Richmond, and this is actually my first time calling into you, so a little unsure, kind of how this thing works. I don't know. Can I just kind of ask you anything, or is it like a specific topic, or?
Hunter from Richmond, feel free to ask me anything.
Okay, cool. I'll try to keep it brief here, because I've seen some of the clips that you're really generous with some of these callers, I will say. But two things, though. The first thing is, I want to know your opinion on one of the reporters asking the White House press secretary about Amazon putting a tariff price percentage on their products and essentially blaming the White House for that price increase essentially rolling over to the consumers, even though they said it wouldn't. And then the other thing I'm curious about, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a report that came out about a month ago that Apple was avoiding paying tariffs by flying in their phones on private jets. And I kind of thought to myself, well, I don't think they should be allowed to do that, because on one hand, I don't agree with the Trump tariff.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if there is a tariff in place, you shouldn't just be able to avoid it
Right.
to not pay it. So I'm just kind of maybe help put some clarification on that.
Okay. I haven't heard that story about Apple flying in their phones on private jets. My understanding, but if so, obviously, no, I don't believe people should skirt the law. B, Trump has, as far as I know, rolled back. He caved on the tariffs for phones, computers, one or two other things coming from China. As far as the question, I'm not sure what you're asking. I think we even played that clip. What Amazon was reportedly going to do was simply to add, in the same way that, like, if you buy something and then it's like tax and shipping, they were just going to add, and sometimes like you see it on your phone bill, fee for this, fee for that. And they were just going to put tariff to explain what caused the increase in price. Personally, I think that should be, I definitely think it's good policy. It also, I think, would inhibit inflation in some way, because if everybody had to be transparent about the tariff raising the price, you couldn't get people who, and this is undoubtedly going to happen. Once the tariffs drive up the price of things, other sellers are going to raise their prices, because that's the mentality. If people are getting more, if prices go up in one area, people are just going to raise their prices, because that increases the elasticity in which people, what their expectations are to pay. That's what happened to a large extent. Well, not a large extent, in the wake of COVID. And so, I think the question was a good question, and it apparently got Trump on the phone with Jeff Bezos, as it was reported, I think yesterday, and got him, if he was ever going to do it, to reverse it.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and this is just something that I feel like people aren't talking about enough, is I feel like the mainstream media is putting too much pressure on the White House, essentially saying, hey, these tariffs are forcing these companies to pass on that price to the consumer. But it doesn't seem like enough people are talking about, well, why don't we, if we're going to put this tariff in place, why don't we put a temporary policy to where these multi-billion-dollar companies can't increase their prices?
Listen.
Force them not only to pay it, but I don't see a lot of people going to the companies. They're just kind of, bending a knee to it.
Well, listen, the Trump administration certainly has the authority to impose price controls. The first person, and maybe the only person in the history of the country, at least in modern history, to do it was Richard Nixon. And so if Donald Trump really wants to make sure that those corporations, but in his mind, the corporations that are going to be paying this tariff are the Chinese corporations, for example, in the case of China. But the way this works, and he could impose price controls, but let's say you get a plastic bag, okay, whatever it is. I sell beads. I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything else. And I sell seeds. We're not doing cedar seeds this year, but in the past I've sold cannabis seeds. Okay, let's say I get these little plastic containers for the seeds, and I buy them from Joe's Plastic Containers. Well, Joe's Plastic Containers gets them from a distributor, Acme Distributor. And Acme Distributor gets it from an import company. And the import company gets it from Chinese company. Well, Chinese company pays the tariff. It's an extra, let's say, 2.5 cents, 3 cents on this plastic container. The importer, they mark up based on a percentage, not a flat fee. And so all of a sudden, the amount that they make goes up because they get a percentage, and they sell it to the distributor, and the distributor also gets a percentage, and they sell it to Joe's, plastic containers, and it comes in exponentially higher than the actual tariff was. And then they sell it to me. And then my business is like, oh, wait a second, I can't sell the seeds at this price. I got to jack it up. And so you got to impose price controls probably right at the beginning of that with the importers. And who's going to pay it? You can't impose the price control on the Chinese firm because they're not going to cut their ask for that product. You can't impose it on them. They're not an American company, so they just won't sell it. And that's what's happened. That's why the Port of LA is anticipating 35% less goods coming in.
Interesting. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Well, the whole thing is unfortunate. I mean, the value of tariffs is if you do want to spur your own little plastic container business in America, you would incentivize the building of a factory. You would help train the workers who need to work in there if it's a specialty type of thing. And then you'd impose the tariff so that you could protect. It's called protectionism. And, in certain instances, it's good if you want to use it to build an industry, but that's not what they're doing. Appreciate the call. The abortion nurse. Why aren't you doing cedar seeds this year? Now I don't know what I'm going to plant for my first grow. It just got to be too much. It was fun to do. Maybe I'll bring it back in a couple of years.
It's good stuff too.
Mayday protest. Apple flew tons of iPhones to other countries to avoid Chinese tariffs. It was widely reported a few years back. Unsure when other companies did this before Chinese goods then would ship them through Mexico to U.S. on a cheaper Mexican tariffs. I see. Okay, thank you. Calling from a 224 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, hey there. JJ calling from Chicago.
JJ from Chicago. Why do I absolutely believe you're from Chicago?
Oh, I am. Sitting right here, right next to Lake Michigan, I don't eat as many hot dogs as I should, I guess, but...
Yeah,
hey,
no, your accent. That's how I was being facetious.
Oh, gotcha. Hey, okay, so I, first-time caller, also pretty new listener. I just started watching, saw you on the PBD, and I said, hey, this guy kind of rules. Might start watching him.
Oh, well, anyway, thank you, Patrick Bet-David.
Yeah. My question is kind of hopeless and a little bit funny, I guess. So, we're watching Trump do all this after he won, feeling very emboldened by his win. And the Democrats clearly maybe not powerless, but capitulating and letting Trump do his thing, hoping that they'll reap the rewards in the future, right? So I guess my question is there anything that's going to happen between now and then that's going to challenge him, That's going to challenge Trump? Yeah.
Between now and the midterms?
Or between now and even the end of the fourth year. I mean, what can they do to...
I mean, after the midterms, if the Democrats take majorities in the House, at the very least, they have subpoena power and they can start holding hearings and start digging into a lot of this stuff. Prior to that, Democrats could be gumming up the works in the Senate. They have a little bit less ability to do that in the House, but they could really be slow walking stuff in the Senate if they wanted to.
But they don't. They're not going to do that because they don't want to. Or
well, I mean, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer. Why aren't
they doing anything?
Because Chuck Schumer is afraid, and to a certain extent, part of the reason why people were I was so upset about him essentially providing the votes for the Republican budget is because there's very few places of leverage. They can be difficult. And why won't he do it? Because some combination of like Senate collegiality, some notion that, well, they'll be mean next time we're in charge of the Senate, which of course they do anyways. And some notion that they'll
sent him those questions, right? You sent him all 8 of those questions. So that'll do something.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's going to really tie up the Trump administration for a long time.
Actually, could I ask you something else?
Yeah.
So if Trump doesn't have to follow the rulings by the Supreme Court, what are some Supreme Court rulings that maybe we don't have to follow?
Well, the point is he does have to follow. And the point is like, when does the Democratic leadership listen? Chuck Schumer can get on any TV program he wants to tomorrow. I mean, this afternoon.
Yeah.
He could call up CNN and say, I want to come on and talk about how Donald Trump, we're in a constitutional crisis now. That's it. He could do that.
That would be great. He should do it.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Don't hold your breath.
Well,
We'll
I
see.
hope you get to dunk
Car
on Ethan
tax.
soon. Thank you so much for having me. I'll keep watching. And also, if you do end up dunking all over Ethan, will that solve the liberal Zionist problem? Can you make that into like a flagship movement saying, hey, liberal Zionists, look at what's going on? Is that possible?
I mean, I think the people the people who maintain that perspective on Israel, I think it is such a I think there is so much cognitive dissonance between what they grew up with understanding and what they grew up believing and what they're seeing with their own eyes that they simply can't reconcile those things. And different people are reacting in different ways.
Yeah, their priests didn't molest them when they were kids. Like that's what happened to me when I was growing up. I saw these Catholic people getting, oh my gosh, what happened? So maybe this is like that to them.
Maybe.
But anyway, I'm taking too much of your time. You have a great one. Thanks so
Appreciate
much.
the call. And just to clarify, what I think the caller was saying is that as a Catholic, when you start to see the scandal in the Catholic Church, the protecting of all these predators, and it starts to make you wonder about the institution of the church. Now, in this instance, it's not a one-to-one analogy, but someone my age, anyways, grew up perceiving Israel's fate and my fate were intertwined. And because that was what I was told by a lot of different people. I was also told the story of the settlement of Israel that was simply not true. And then on top of which, to see what is going on in Gaza today, just a wholesale slaughter. Multiple genocidal acts. However you want to call it. I mean, we're slaughtering more children. And by we, I mean, our tax dollars. Than I think we did in Iraq. And that was a war between two militaries. Not what initially was like a supposed terrorist group. So, all right, let's check this out. This is impressive. Mark Andreessen. Last we heard, he was telling us lies about Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on Joe Rogan's program. I mean, just out and out lies. Unless he's just a real moron about this stuff.
Saying the CFPB was debanking people when in fact they were doing the exact opposite of fighting banks, debanking people.
And then the Republicans in the House and Senate repealed the rule that the CFPB used to get people rebanked. Which I guess I don't know if he ever went anywhere to complain about that. And this guy also was at the nexus, apparently, of some big chat groups in the run up to the election between a lot of like right wing people and tech bros, some of whom were super Nazi-ish, apparently, on these chats.
Well, Andreessen himself had to apologize to the continent of India for saying that the British Raj was good for them.
Well, I mean, it's like akin to like, slavery was good. You got a lot of people got free room and board.
Yep.
I just like, Do these people not hear themselves? Listen to what Mark Andreessen says.
Every great venture capitalist in the last 70 years has missed most of the great companies of his generation, right? Like, so the great VCs have a success, record of getting, I don't know, 2 out of 10 or something of the great companies of the decade, right? And so, if it was a science, you could eventually have somebody who just like that.
Now, pause it for a second. The great VCs have a 20% batting record. Now, I'm not sure I understand what this means. He means that for every 10 companies you invest in, maybe only 2, if you're the best at it, do well. Now, there's no way to measure all the potential companies they did not invest in, that VCs did not invest in, that could have been huge successes. So 20% is not even the success rate of these venture capitalists, because it's not including all the ones they failed to invest in. This is just a measure of like what the rate of return is. This is just an algorithm for what they can expect to actually get some money back. But in terms of like what companies they missed, we don't really know. We don't know what could have been a really innovative product or helpful to society or was not profitable enough to be helpful to society. But he's just talking about profit. So understand, like, this is all graded on a curve. Good.
The great VCs have a success, record of getting, I don't know, 2 out of 10 or something of the great companies of the decade, right? And so, if it was a science, you could eventually have somebody who just like dials it in and gets 8 out of 10. But in the real world, it's not like that. It's you're in the fluke business. And so there's an intangibility to it. There's a taste aspect, the human relationship aspect, the psychology. By the way, a lot of it is psychological analysis, like who are these people? How do they react under pressure? How do you keep them from falling apart? How do you keep them going crazy? How do you keep them going crazy yourself?
I would just like to replay that part of how do you keep them from going crazy, because I think that is actually the most pertinent question that can be asked about this.
How do they react under pressure? How do you keep them from falling apart? How do you keep them going crazy? How do you keep them going crazy yourself? You end up being a psychologist half the time. And so like it is possible, I don't want to be definitive, but like it's possible that is quite literally timeless. And when the AIs are doing everything else, like that may be one of the last remaining fields that people are still doing.
Do you know how like fascinatingly dumb that comment is? Just fascinatingly dumb. I wonder if there's any other jobs where people are like functioning as like psychiatrists, they're therapists to people, or like teaching them or helping them not go crazy, or like all of social work and teaching and therapy. I wonder if that's like that too. Oh, AI can replace that. I mean, it's just, there's this expectation that these people who fluked, as he said, who fluked are intelligent. And I'm sorry. I'm not saying the guy's a total idiot, but I think what happens a lot of times is that people of moderate intelligence get lucky, and instead of attributing it to luck, attribute it to some unique quality they have, some higher intelligence, some deeper sensitivity, some whatever it is. And that begins to corrupt their intelligence and undermine their intelligence and cause them to say things that they don't question. They don't even realize if it comes out of my mouth, it's pure gold.
They think of themselves as philosopher kings. I would recommend this. This is over a decade old. This was at the height of the sort of venture capitalist, I would say, madness that this country's gone through, trusting these sorts of folks with our economic priorities. Diane Mulcahy, I believe for the Harvard Business Review, 6 Myths About Venture Capitalists, has a bunch of good info about how this entire industry is basically a joke. And these guys, they're not taking risks with their own money. They're spending other people's money. Their main income isn't, like you said, like because it makes all these good businesses, because it's a fluke business. Guys like that get fees for investing other people's money regardless of the performance. Like, this is a joke that we look to these people as the stewards of innovation, and that's this. People like him are why we're losing to China.
Violet Orchid says 20% sure seems like it's less than randomly choosing.
Their return on investment is not good for venture capital. And also, I would just say business startups have been tanking since the 70s as monopoly gets worse. All these guys do these podcasts talking about it's like some era of kumbaya, while monopolies just eat up the ability to start a new business in this country.
Can you put the picture of Andreessen back up? Or just...
Now, people are really concerned about what's going on with his head.
That was what I was going to point to. I don't want to be ableist, or I don't know if he has a problem, but maybe that's why he's smarter than all of us, because look at that dome.
Well,
that's why Tim Pool wears a beanie.
You know, I don't think you would call that a dome. You might call that a steeple.
Cone? Remember the cone heads?
Yes, of course. It is possible, and this is one theory that I've heard, and there's one theory I've heard, that his head got stuck in between one of those doors that go around like this. What do you call those?
Revolving door?
Revolving doors. And it just pressured him, and that's why he's talking like this.
I think it's a perfect shape for him to shove it up his ass.
I thought the smarter you get, maybe, that's why they call it higher intelligence, because it pushes the head up.
About 3 inches higher than it usually is.
Exactly. Calling from a 514 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 514?
Hello, this is Snorser from Montreal.
This is who?
Snorserer. I'm using my IM name.
Okay. Snorserer from Montreal. What's up?
Yeah, I hate to do this and be all parasocial right now, but I need to share this. Earlier, I sent in an IM. You read my name and immediately got distracted talking about Social Security again, and then moved on. And I told yourself to give yourself a shofar, because today you're like a kid visiting the fireman, and I wanted you to get the press to fire him.
That's pretty good. Yes, I will do that. It was sort of like that.
In all seriousness, I wanted to talk about one of two things. Either, obviously, being from Montreal, yesterday's episode was great. I could talk more about the Canadian election, or just my recent strategy to radicalize normal people and other people around your life, whichever one is more interesting to you.
Actually, the last one probably is.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Essentially, I'm starting from the idea of whenever you're at a family event or around people and you get told, like, hey, whatever is going on, like I remember back when the campus protests here were happening in Montreal, and it was super tame compared to anything that happened over in the United States. I would hear some family members tell me that, like, oh, it's not that big a deal, or like, why are they protesting? It's not worth it, or we're not there yet, or all of that kind of stuff. And to agree that at some point it is important to act, and it is important to act early, even. And I'm not condoning violence, but like, if there is a point where eventually violence is warranted, then you should act before that point. And the best way to get that into the conversation easily is to joke about, time travel, baby Hitler, that kind of stuff. And then from there, you get people to essentially agree that, like, hey, World War II, like, it would have been bad if we did nothing and just let Germany do whatever. And then you can ask people, like, hey, if you were in Germany, when would you have acted? And then you can go through the timeline, and I'm not going to go into any specific examples here, but giving the examples, the timeline doesn't really matter if it's accurate, but you can say stuff like, hey, when Germany started doing this specific thing, like, would that have been warranted for you to act? And usually people will agree at some point where it's like, hey, when you put people in camps, and then you go, well, maybe you should have acted before going into camps. Like, what about the armbands? Like, was that enough for you to act? And then you walk back in the timeline until you get to petty bureaucratic stuff. And you can now tell them, like, well, right now we are way past the petty bureaucratic stuff. Like, we're already, Trump is sending people to El Salvador. I mean, there's all over the place. There's people being silenced for their speech. There's crazy stuff going on. And usually the person you're specifically talking to might not work on them, but then whoever's around in that room eventually is going to come back talking to you and be like, hey, what you said made sense, and then ask you more about stuff. That happened to me recently during a Easter getaway with the family, where I think one of my uncles is mad at me, but all of my cousins are super into politics now.
Well, that sounds great. And I think, it's a good point. I mean, I appreciate the call. Let me just answer it off, but thanks for the call.
Yeah, thank you.
There's a certain amount of embarrassment. You don't want to be considered as to be an alarmist. And you don't want to get too far ahead of of the idea of like we're headed to fascism. And so people, I don't know if this is the case, but I remember once hearing that a big source of drownings come because people are too embarrassed to say that they're drowning at one point and think they're going to be able to get out of it. And they don't do it. I mean, it's usually like panic, I think, with drownings, but that embarrassment sometimes plays into it too. They don't want it too early be like, wait a second, I got a problem here. They don't want the lifeguard to come jumping in. And I do think there is I don't know where this leads. I mean, but right now it seems like the race has started. I don't know where the finish line is, but it seems.
There's some stuff, some words from the judge as he freed Modawi said, describe him as a peaceful figure who seeks consensus in a highly charged political environment, but the judge added, even if he were a firebrand, his conduct is protected by the First Amendment. The court is aware that he has offended his political opponents and apparently given rise to concerns at the State Department that he is an obstacle to American foreign policy. Such conduct is insufficient to support a finding that he is in any way a danger, as we use that term in context of detention and release. Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day, Crawford said, citing the Red Scare and McCarthy-era targeting of people for their political views. The wheel of history has come around again, but as before, these times of excess will pass.
Hopefully. It's not guaranteed. The thing about them passing is not guaranteed, but at least this guy's doing his part. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's better to show confidence after you've done what you can do.
Exactly. It really should be, as long as we uphold these principles, this era too will pass.
I've been watching the new Nathan Fielder show that someone brought up earlier. And the first episode is about airline crashes. And I've read this before as well as the show, but apparently most airline crashes are caused by a co-pilot being too scared to speak up to challenge the authority of the pilot.
That was a famous case study, I think, with Japanese pilots or something like that, because of more hierarchical societies afraid to go over the person who's directly above you.
Folks, this sound signals the end of the call-in portion of the program. I'm going to read a couple of IMs, verified ex-user, Mark Egdreesen. That's pretty stupid and good. I love that. Longtime listener, says Andy from Kansas City. I was able to talk to you about progressive arming themselves just in case. Have your thoughts evolved on this? I mean, do I think that we should be having weapons? I don't know how that plays out. I really don't. Listen, if people want to get weapons,
I don't think a YouTube show should be the place to push them over that particular
no, absolutely
threshold.
Not. I mean, that's decisions that people are going to make. But do I think that If we get to a point where weapons are going to be necessary, is that going to work out well for us? I suspect not. Let's put it that way. There feels like a huge gulf between taking up arms and civil disobedience. And just even where we are in terms of like protest and political moves. I mean, I actually think that if you deploy weapons too early, it becomes problematic because you're giving a very easy reason for a government crackdown. Much harder to justify this person is protesting against a genocide, therefore they're a threat to everybody's safety.
Right.
Versus this guy just took a gun and started shooting up people.
To the extent that we have any sort of track record on this, bringing a gun to, say, a BLM protest is a way to have somebody get out and shoot you and get away with it at this point. So yeah, I think if you want something for personal deterrence or that sort of thing, but as far as politics, I don't think guns are should be a forward-facing political accessory.
Fabulash. I'll read 5 of these. I work in fashion design with Walmart, other big box stores as clients for tariffs. No one knows what's going on. There is currently a standoff waiting with no orders. At the end of Trump 1.0, there was a push to move from China because of the China virus. So China just built more factories in other countries. It looks like he's not budging on China and manufacturing is moving to other Asian countries and Africa. Pardoned Jimmy Pesto. The Baileys lost their mother to a car tax. Cole from Michigan. Sam, don't go. You must have seen Goodfellas. Raul. Oh, I get what you're saying. I'm a Maryland man's son. That's supposed to be I'm Marilyn Manson? Oh, God. I don't know. I don't know what that's about. All right, 2 more. Russell from Texas. Tim really caught up talking about the accuracy of headlines because that's all he ever reads. And the final I am of the day. Andrew Cuomo. Oh, glad to hear you're listening. What it was old is new again. I'm asking for your vote in the upcoming New York City mayoral election. They're all coming for our preciously pure bodily fluids. And if you elect me, I assure that no patriotic American will have their precious pure bodily fluid tainted by the woke mob, nor the Me Too abusers. No may mean no, but I never asked permission, and therefore they didn't say no. Oof. Too close to the bone on that one. Matt, Russ, Emma in absentia. Good job today, folks. See you tomorrow.